There are 6 players you'll regret not at least trying to trade away before week 5, because if you wait any longer, it may be too late. But if this is your first time here, I'm Joe. I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy leagues over the last decade, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. I start off every video with some urgent fantasy football news, and I answer some timely Q&A from the comments of the last video, and then we get into today's one key topic, so feel free to skip ahead, but let's get right into it. If you're watching this before Thursday Night Football, Mac Jones expected to make his 3rd start of the season. Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and George Kittle will be out for this game against the Rams. Brandon Ayuk already sidelined, so this offense is running really thin at this point. So yeah, Mac Jones getting the start again. If you're counting on any 49ers pass catcher not named CMC, the expectations need to be lowered big time. The Browns are making a change at quarterback. Rookie Dillon Gabriel will start week 5 against the Vikings in London. Joe Flacco was pretty brutal through 4 games, guys, and Gabriel actually looked pretty good in the preseason. Definitely better efficiency, so slight upgrade for David Njoku, but that Minnesota defense is no joke. It's not a guy that I'm going to add on the waiver wire right now, but hopefully we can start to see this offense take a step in the right direction. More injuries in Tampa Bay. Bucky Irving has a foot sprain, considered week to week. He was spotted in a walking boot, so he's probably not going to be suiting up against Seattle, obviously. Rashad White would step in as the lead back with some Sean Tucker mixing in. It does mean that White, though, could be in line for some real volume here. He's someone that probably isn't on the waiver wire, but if you were smart enough to stash him for this injury, he's in a pretty good spot. Kind of must-start territory if Irving sits. We do have some good news today. Jayden Daniels is back, cleared to practice after that knee injury that's been holding him out, is expected to play in week 5 against the Chargers. Great news for Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and I think this could be a pretty high-scoring game, so both of those guys get a significant boost. The real story here is Jayden Daniels. Will he be as, mobile? Is he going to use his legs as much coming back from that knee injury? That's what remains to be seen, but wheels up for Jayden Daniels. Opposite of wheels up for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Looks like he's week to week now with that hamstring injury. Reports are saying he's unlikely to play this week against Houston, obviously, which means that Cooper Rush will get that start. Massive downgrade for all the Ravens skill guys. This whole offense is going to take a pretty big hit. We've already seen it in the Vegas implied team total. I think Derrick Henry is probably the only one that survives this injury, and I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see Lamar until after the bye. We talked about Trey Benson yesterday. That news broke right before the video went out, and Amari DeMercado looks like he's going to be the lead back going forward, but Michael Carter is still going to work in. So I think Michael Carter probably going to get the majority of the work on the ground. DeMercado get the majority of the work through the air. I think that both of these guys should be added everywhere. If one of them steps in to a bigger role, I would be shocked. I actually think that this one's going to be a little bit more of a committee than we would have seen with Trey Benson taking over for James Conner. So I think both are solid adds. But I don't think that any of these guys are going to be like league winners or anything like that. But at least the 4 weeks that they'll get with Trey Benson out will be like a solid filler. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on this Michael Carter versus DeMercado stuff as we get closer to kickoff. All right, let's rapid fire through a couple other things. Braylon Allen did go on injured reserve. We're going to see a lot more Breece Hall the next few weeks, which is good news for Breece Hall owners, obviously. Darren Waller, looks like there's going to be a jump in his snap count in week 5 against the Panthers. Yeah, 2 touchdowns on 12 routes will do that. But if he ends up seeing more volume, obviously with Tyreek out, more opportunities there, I actually think he's a decent streaming tight end for week 5. You're really looking for any of these guys just to get on the end zone, and I think there's a decent size bet that he'll get back in again. Brock Bowers, knee limited. Yeah, they're really not talking a lot about this injury, but he's definitely not looked like himself the last couple of weeks. He's running around with the brace, all of that. So I think he's still a tight end 1, but I don't know if we can put him in that elite category until he starts to look a little bit more mobile out there. Dallas Goedert, knee, did not practice on Wednesday. Yeah, what we'll worry about here is if it's the same injury that held him out in week 2 against the Chiefs, or if it's a new injury entirely. So we'll keep an eye on Dallas Goedert, but that's going to do it for news. All right, guys, we got a bunch of good questions on the last video, so going to add a couple extra. I know you guys are kind of battling through some trade stuff right now, so I think it'd be valuable if we just answered a few more than normal, so I hope that's okay. First thing here, always nice to see these comments. Great video, enjoyed the style of video, refreshing to see the mature responses to negative comments. Yeah, I mean, I don't have all the answers, guys. I'm doing the best I can to, piece through all the information out there and give you guys some of the best recommendations that I can. That's the goal. Appreciate it, man. No questions for me today. Just want to say really appreciating the consultancy and transparency. Transparency is I do my best, right? Like, it's hard. There's a lot of takes flying around from obviously draft season. I know kind of my guys, my not guys, those type of things. So try and stay as transparent as possible. Appreciate the nice comments. This stuff is nice. I do the best I can to give you as much information for free as I possibly can. Obviously, the membership community gets a little bit closer access to me, but the best way that I can give you guys just more value is answer questions, and try and provide as much value as possible, right, for free. So that's the goal, right? So the goal is always to give you guys as much as possible for free. And if you want to kind of go deeper down the rabbit hole of my ecosystem with the rankings and the membership community, it's just a bonus on top of that. And really, these videos, the whole point of doing these longer form videos this year is to get a little bit closer to you guys and just continue to just really cultivate a fantasy audience, and really just try and bring you guys, I guess, from start to finish, how I'm thinking about fantasy football, draft season, right through the season with trades, waivers, all that stuff. And then into the off season, there's a lot of good stuff coming for that too. So thanks for being here, I guess, is the moral of that story. So thanks, guys. First question that we have today. My team, Daniel Jones, DK Metcalf. So basically what you're asking is, should you drop Daniel Jones or Demercado and able to pick up Jaden Daniels? A resounding yes for me on Jaden Daniels. I think that if he's sitting out there for some crazy reason, I would not be hesitant to drop him for. I mean, if you did want to try and trade some of these assets, I think you could probably do that. But yeah, I'm absolutely grabbing Jaden Daniels, and I'm laughing all the way to the bank with that one. Cool. What else we got here? I traded Derrick Henry and DK for Pittman and Lamar. So I would imagine that this trade probably went through before the Lamar Jackson hamstring issue, I guess before we thought that he might be out until after the bye, right? So by today's rankings, or my rest of the season rankings, I like the Henry and Metcalf side. I think by a decent margin in this one. I would probably just want to have the access to Derrick Henry versus just like, I'm always going to probably break ties in favor of the running back and wide receiver together versus a wide receiver and a quarterback package, because we can piece together quarterback typically. So my take would be side A is probably the winner of that trade, my man. So Knicks at Philly. Oh, so basically the start sit stuff. Always want to mention too that we're starting we had our first one last week, which was a lot of fun. A live stream on Sunday morning. So I always do my DraftKings and FanDuel position by position, build a lineup at the end stream at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Been doing it for like 6 years. Adding like a start sit, ask me anything fantasy football stream directly after that. So that'll probably start around like 10:15 Eastern time, maybe around 10 Eastern time. I'm probably just going to have it be the same live stream. So jump in there, ask some questions. I'll do all the start sits, or as many as I possibly can on that one. Saw Benson injury and announced so that's what was crazy yesterday, right? So like the Benson injury comes out, waivers are already processed everywhere, so it's just a full sprint to get Demercado on waivers. I think someone else mentioned it here too. Yeah, the Michael Carter stuff. So my first instinct was Demercado as well, just like go grab him. Michael Carter is interesting because he's going to get basically all of the early down stuff. I couldn't agree more with this comment. And Demercado is going to get more of the passing down stuff. So instead of just like the James Conner role or the Trey Benson role, I think it's going to be mostly split down the middle. So it's possible we don't want either of these guys. We'll see if one can kind of emerge after this week, but I'm a little bit cooler on that than I was when I was all excited, basically, with the Michael Carter versus Demercado stuff. We'll see. So I would say that, like, yeah, most of those guys are probably gone at this point, but I don't think it's like the end of the world if you didn't get them, basically. I have Terry McLaurin. Should I trade him for DK Metcalf and Darren Waller? Yeah, I had to look at this one a little bit. So I think DK Metcalf is the best player in this list, probably rest of season for me, slightly over Terry McLaurin for me. So if you can get Darren Waller on top of that, who's kind of like a big unknown at this point, stash him, see if he continues to have a role in the red zone. That's really all you're looking for at tight end anyways. Yeah, I like the Metcalf side of this deal. What else we got? Got Ted McMillan for Justin Fields. Might save my team. Yeah, that's a home run, my man. Anytime you can get a guy, I guess, at the higher end of wide receiver for any sort of quarterback, I think it's a win, right? Yeah, I think that's a really nice deal for you. Obviously, have him much further ahead in rankings for rest of season. DJ Moore. Yeah, in the spirit of transparency, DJ Moore was kind of one of my guys going into this season, and I was dead wrong on him kind of emerging as the wide receiver one in Chicago. It seems like this regime wasn't ready to fully embrace DJ Moore. Odunze's look great, right? So that was a miss for me, for sure. I don't know if we're completely cooked, but I definitely have him pretty far down my rankings. I guess to kind of look at what you have here, would you trade Jacoby Myers for David Montgomery? Like, I have Jacoby Myers significantly ahead of DJ Moore in my rest of season rankings now. So to me, this trade that you're looking at, my side would still be Jacoby over David Montgomery. That one's a little bit closer, but yeah, I'm actually pretty bullish on Jacoby Myers. We talked about that yesterday on guys I'd be trading for in that video. So far I'm 3-1 just because of Ashton Jeanty. Yeah, the Ashton Jeanty stuff, we're going to talk about him more in this video. I've settled on him as a sell high, if that's any indication of where we're going. Tiny typing, unreadable and annoying, great material, but tough to follow with the type size. Yeah, man, so I assume you're talking about this stuff, right? So I can do my best to try and make these bigger. I'm kind of experimenting a little bit with formats. Like we did the whiteboard stuff. There's always going to be some people that don't like the whiteboard stuff too. But I want these to be faster for me to create, right? So if I have to put together like these YouTube videos that take all of this extra editing and we kind of keep the pace really fast and it's a little bit less personal, we got music, we got like animations flying around, it just takes more time. So for me, in order to get out like what my goal is, like 4 to 5 long form YouTube videos per week for you guys on the fantasy side, I have to be able to put these together relatively quickly. So like I think the best way to do that, give you guys some news, answer you guys some of your guys' questions directly, and then have like a one key topic at the end that we can kind of fly through what I think are some of the most important like points for each of these players in these topics. So I can try and package it differently, or maybe just try and make it a little bit bigger. But appreciate the feedback, man. Appreciate the feedback. Should I trade Ladd and DK for Rashi and Jacoby? Yeah, this one I would say I would prefer the Rashee Rice and Jacoby side by like a slight margin. I'm a little bit worried about Ladd McConkey just in general. I think that he's still like one of those guys that I would bet on and trade for in particular. But Rashee Rice is someone that is like a massive target for me at this point. So yeah, I think the Jacoby side and Rashee Rice side would be an edge for me on this one. DK Metcalf is not really one of my guys either. But I'm still leaving the light on for Ladd McConkey, like I talked about yesterday. But I think you've got a lot of depth here too. So I think you're in a pretty good position. Should I keep Jeanty? Yeah, we'll be talking through Jeanty later on in this video. 10-team league. Would you trade away Hurts and Nico Collins for Rice and Devontae Adams? Hurts and Nico Collins for Rice and Devontae Adams. I would prefer the Hurts side of this one. So you do get a little bit of positional like superiority with a Jalen Hurts type of player. Those onesie positions, like having like that top tier is nice. I know we talked about this with Lamar too, and I guess I'm contradicting a little bit. Like the two wide receivers here, Adams and Rice, this one's close, but I still have hope for Nico Collins. Maybe I'm a sucker, but I have this one slightly ahead for the first side, Hurts and Nico Collins. Hope it helps. Half PPR, Saquon for Chase and Kenneth Walker. Who's winning? Give me Saquon here. Yeah, I've been pretty aggressive about moving down my Bengals in my rest of season rankings so far. Jamar Chase is the one. Like if I'm looking at T and Jamar Chase is the one that I think can survive at least a little bit based on his efficiency. Get the ball in his hands. He's a great player. He's going to make big plays. But it's just really tough to do that for a guy like T. I'm very worried about Chase Brown as well. I think between those three guys, Jamar Chase is the one that I think can at least survive. But yeah, I'm not trading. I mean, ideally, if you can get someone like Saquon in a 2-for-1 like this, I prefer just upgrading at running back and moving on from the Jamar Chase side if I can. I did laugh at this reply, though. Who wins in this trade? No one. Yeah, Saquon hasn't been great this year either, guys. I get that. That offensive line a little bit different this year. We haven't seen those explosive plays, but I'm not giving up on Saquon. Thoughts on me trading away ETN and JSN to get Rashee Rice and Jeanty? A lot of Rashee Rice questions. A lot of guys are wrestling with that. Yeah, so ETN and JSN. Yeah, I don't think I want to trade away Jackson Smith-Njigba right now. Like he still has the upside of like wide receiver 1 overall in his repertoire. As much as I like Rashee Rice, you probably clicked on the thumbnail of this video. Ashton Jeanty is a sell for me currently, so I prefer side 1 of this, ETN and JSN. Would you do Walker and Brees straight up now with Allen's injury? Walker and Brees straight up. I prefer Brees by a pretty decent margin. Yeah. I prefer Brees if you can get that one done. Should I trade Khalil Shakir? He's actually in today's video as well. Little teaser. Can y'all help me? I was thinking about getting AJ Brown, giving up Debo. Yeah, Debo is like perfect for this offense. I get that. I still give me AJ Brown. What are we doing here? AJ Brown for me over Debo Samuel. So if you guys want to get all of your questions answered, obviously we have the membership community, the Fantasy Accelerator. There's a link in the description for that. Check it out. If you just want my rankings, top150free.com. Get my rankings completely free if you put in your email. If you have some more questions, drop them down below this video. I try and answer as many as I possibly can, but I read every single one. And appreciate you guys being here. But let's jump into today's one key topic. We're talking about players that I'd be trading away before kind of the bottom falls out. Going to try and take that feedback to heart and zoom in a little bit for you guys here. So the first player that we're going to talk about that I'd be trading away, aggressively selling high on, is Ashton, Jeanty. So obviously the volume didn't really equal production to start the year, weeks 1 through 3. Not great, right? So no game over 63 yards despite the bell cow usage. Week 1, his snap share was really strong. Week 2, really just like a middling return overall. The offensive line is the big concern here, right? They do have a really tough schedule in general. So a lot of that stuff just is going to lead him to be basically hit behind the scrimmage more than almost anyone in the league right now. So it really doesn't matter the talent if you don't have the pieces around you. That's why it's always really tough to get behind some of these high pick running backs in the draft when your team has a lot of needs in general. You really build that offensive line and defensive line outwards. I guess after you get your quarterback is usually the approach that I think is optimal. But you could have all the talent in the world at running back. It's really tough to be successful. So we're seeing that in real time. So the receiving role is also a little bit concerning, right? Basically MIA. Weeks 1 through 3, 2 targets for 2 yards in week 1, 3 for 4 for 1 yard in week 2, 0 targets in week 3. So, like, I was projecting him for like 50 to 60 targets this year, which isn't a crazy amount, but we really haven't seen that show up yet. So, I think that Carroll would like to get him more carries, obviously. The signal has kind of been like run first for him overall, though, not targets. So, I think week 4 and this big box score is masking the overall problems. If you've been waiting to unload Jeanty, I think this is the time to do it and aggressively pursue those deals, right? So, this Bears team is completely terrible. They're missing a bunch of key starters. At surface, it looks like a breakout when you're watching this game. You're watching Red Zone, whatever it may be. But I don't know. I'm going to need to see it again. It was his first 100-yard scrimmage game of his career. Really soft matchup. So to me, we're kind of selling before he runs into that wall again. The volume is great. The matchups are not great going forward. And the offensive line is one of the worst in the entire league. So the efficiency is what we need at this like level of where we drafted Ashton Jeanty. And we really haven't gotten it. So I'm strongly looking right now at some other options in this range. I think if we're just looking kind of at some guys that I would absolutely trade him for, this might be helpful for some people. So if we're staring at Ashton Jeanty, I would rather have Devontae Adams. I would rather have Josh Jacobs. I would rather have Rome Odunze. I would rather have Derrick Henry. I would rather have Amari and Hampton. If that gives you an idea of like what to shoot for in a 1v1, I think I still would rather have Jeanty ahead of guys like Jalen Waddle, Garrett Wilson, Tet McMillan, Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams. So it's not like the bottom's going to completely fall out on this guy, but I think there's some value here in moving up a little bit in your rest of season tiers if you can. So I'd be aggressively attacking some of these teams that potentially have like a 1-3 start, an 0-4 start. Maybe you can package Jeanty and get up even a further tier. Maybe you can package him into like an elite wide receiver, something like that. I'd be actively trying to do that. And honestly, I'm looking at anything on the lower side while making picks for Jeanty this coming week. And I think in general, people are, I guess, being fooled right now with what we just saw in week 4. Since we're always talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give new DraftKings customers a deal that you won't want to miss for week 5. When you play $5 or more on your first paid Pick 6 entry, you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. That's right, play $5, get $50 in bonus picks to keep building your slips and take your shot at big payouts. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, sign up using my promo code Holka and start playing today. If you've been thinking about trying Pick 6, now's the time to get in. Just use my code Holka to sign up, and all new DraftKings customers can play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Let's build some slips. But the next guy that I'm trading away shouldn't be a huge surprise. He wasn't someone that I was super bullish on this year in general, but DeAndre Swift. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift. The usage looks pretty good. The efficiency does not. Are you guys seeing like a theme when it comes to that? I still want these guys that can break these big plays for us, that can actually make a massive difference for my fantasy team. And 3.5 yards per carry with almost a third of the yards coming via the air, that's not going to cut it, right? The touches are real, but the role is really just the checkdowns and not enough of those chunk runs. So I think that there's really like a low spike week ceiling here for DeAndre Swift. He ranked dead last in rushing yards over expected per attempt in 2024. So we were already kind of worried about the efficiency. He wasn't a target for me in drafts. But if you do see yourself with DeAndre Swift now, I think that there's a decent like upgrade, obviously, that comes with a Ben Johnson offense. Like it's going to emphasize like a higher completion rate, which is good for targets, right? Overall. But I still want to see big plays. Weeks 3 and 4, 27 carries for 71 yards on the ground, 2.6 yards per carry. The touchdowns are really what's propping up his fantasy value right now. So I think this is like the perfect time to cash out. They do have their week bye right now in week 5. So there's like some immediate utility, I think, in just like trading this guy away to a team that really needs a starter this week. So I actually don't mind trading a guy in their bye week if I do have some depth. You weren't going to be able to play him anyways. So you can kind of, depending on where you're at, if you're in a good position or a bad position, the bye weeks can be a decent time to unload and also acquire players, if that makes sense. So week 6 against Washington, a little bit of a trap. I think that the Commanders are improved, basically. So I would be selling high now on Swift and kind of capitalizing on like the narrative of him being like the lead back, touchdown, all of those things that we've seen recently. That's masking kind of the inefficiency and the lack of production in the box scores on the big play sides of things. Who else we got here? Guys that be trading away. Alvin Kamara. Yeah, the backfield share in this offense is starting to slip a little bit. That is the scare. So RB2, Kendre Miller logged 11 carries for 65 yards in week 4. Kamara had 15 for 70. That's the closest split we've seen yet. So to me, that matters because the early season workhorse vibes that we drafted Kamara on, myself included, he was one of my guys. It's starting to fade a little bit earlier in the season than I expected. So Kamara handled 50 of the Saints' first 79 rushes through the first 3 games, but then that gap really narrowed in week 4. So maybe they might try and make a trade for Kamara, and they want to see, or a trade away Kamara, and they might want to see what they have in Kendre Miller. I don't know. This team's not going to be good. We do know that. Week 4 was the first time this season that New Orleans ran more than it passed as well. So even in like a run-heavy game script, Miller is the one that carved out some real work. So the targets have kind of just bailed us out with Kamara. The usage, that's part of the reason that we drafted him where he was, but Moore's history isn't really the best for feeding running back targets. And the Saints are kind of rolling with a rookie quarterback at this, or he feels like a rookie, but a young quarterback with a lot of holes in his game with Rattler. So I think it matters because the PPR outs that we got with Kamara and that we've lived on with him over the last couple of years, I think they might start to thin out a little bit. So New Orleans always going to be in negative game scripts. So we'll see if they can kind of funnel some of those throws, not through just downfield targets. But yeah, I think the aging curve comes for us all at some point, and in a shaky offense, the volatile weekly ceiling concerns me a little bit. I think I am a little bit more bullish on Olave in general, just with the amount of volume that he's seeing and the game script and all that stuff. For Kamara, I'm a little bit more nervous. So to me, I think we want to sell before like the matchups start to get a little bit tougher, right? We have like a nice soft landing spot here. The Giants have allowed the NFL's worst 6.1 yards per carry through 4 weeks. So I actually think that this week might be an okay spot to hold on to them. I just wanted to put this on the radar as someone that if you want to throw some feelers out there, you can almost play that up a little bit. This is a really strong matchup this week, but just knowing that the bottom might fall out and the time to cash out is probably very soon. So I'd be shopping Kamara at this point. Name values should still be there. The Giants game is a nice option for a lot of people in this week with the buys finally hitting, all that stuff, right? All right. I told you guys I would talk about Khalil Shakir. So everyone eats like basically in this offense. That's the tough thing. This Joe Brady offense, the alpha style consolidation that we get in other offenses is very unlikely for Khalil Shakir. They also play at an extremely slow pace, and the way that things are spread out is just not a great combo overall for anyone outside of obviously James Cook and Josh Allen. When Buffalo controls the game, they basically shut it down, right? Allen only threw 25 times in week 2, and they kind of just bleed the clock, right? The volume basically evaporates. It's a lot like Philly in some ways, the way that they win games. And that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to win games. They're not trying to win us fantasy championships. Back-to-back touchdowns, though. Definitely like get the ball in his hands, let him do it after yards after the catch, which is nice. But I don't necessarily think that's a part of the scheme. And it is definitely like a spike in scoring, right? So you get this big play that everyone sees. It's a good time to sell, typically, these explosive plays that people remember in their heads. So season low, 29 offensive snaps, 69 yards and a TD. So the box score was inflated by that big play, not necessarily what else happened throughout that game and obviously early in the season. So only 20 targets through 4 games. The usage is very thin. Is very thin. He's not the primary option. So Coleman, Kincaid, honestly, all of these guys I'm not feeling great about overall. But Shakir's ceiling, I think, kind of disappears if Coleman breaks out or if Kincaid starts to catch more touchdowns, like all of that stuff, right? And neither of those things have really happened yet. So Buffalo has topped 30 points in all 4 games, but the roles remain very spread out, right? So the big weeks kind of rotate in this offense, and that's really tough, right? So this feels a little bit like the peak before the targets start to flatten out a little bit. He's got 2 straight TDs, that highlight reel touchdown. It shapes up as like the perfect sell window for me. So I'm moving him before kind of that slow pace and the split usage starts to drag down the weekly floor to where it probably should be projected at, right? So that's where I'm at. Khalil Shakir. I'm trading him away if I can before week 5, as soon as possible. Marvin Harrison Jr. Not a guy I have really any shares of, and that's not to pat myself on the back. That's just, I guess, to give you guys some context on where I'm at. I probably would have tried and move on from this situation. It does not look good. He's the guy that's really battling with confidence right now, which is really tough to watch for a guy that was drafted where he was. He's really just getting a ton of low percentage touches right now. The target share has not been that great. It's really been a volatile profile, not bankable volume whatsoever. I think the team identity kind of matters as well. They do have a pretty high pass rate, but they've been run leaning in the red zone. And like we want those money targets, right? You would think that the wide receiver one this offense with Trey McBride, who also doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, would be in a great spot. But I don't know if that's going to be something we can count on every week. Obviously, he scores in week 4, so your window to trade him, I think this is the perfect spot, right? The line looks pretty great. Gets his first TD since week 1. That late kind of touchdown saves his day. I think there's just a lot of risk here, right? He only had 2 targets early in the game. Had 2 interceptions credited as his fault as well. So there's really just, I haven't seen like the massive ceiling game yet. Hasn't sniffed 100 yards through 4 weeks this year. So the efficiency red flags are still there. I don't think we have to kind of flip that perception at all yet. The separation, the air yards is an issue overall. We're kind of seeing like these wasted deep targets, and it really hurts his weekly floor. And then he's just dropping these passes that are right in his hands, right? So maybe it's just a mismatch between him and Kyler. I'm not sure. I think you can kind of sell into this Titans game, or you can just kind of continue to ride this roller coaster. But to me, I think that's the main question. If there's a little bit of a narrative boost here after week 4, I think this is a really good time to make that move. And the game flow, and I mean, guess there's a lot of things, right? Like obviously the injuries at running back. I think I'm selling high this week after the TD. And I think the Titans narrative is also an interesting part of it to bring up in your negotiations as well. If you can find someone that sees him as like a top 24 wide receiver, I think that's ideal, obviously. So McBride is the one in this offense that I feel the best about currently by a pretty large margin, obviously. Talking about another offense that's polarizing, Kansas City and Tyquan Thornton. He scored in 3 straight games, but Xavier Worthy active in week 4, logged just 1 catch on 2 targets, was described as an afterthought. So touchdowns still masking a very shrinking role right now. His biggest upside spike came while all of these other guys were out in Kansas City, right? So I don't think that we can rely on that. Worthy's return, the immediate role squeeze that we're going to get from that. And then obviously we're going to get Rashee Rice back from suspension very soon as well. So maybe they end up kind of keeping these roles separate and Tyquan Thornton ends up being still like that deep threat. But I don't know. I still think Worthy is the guy that they want in that role long term, especially when Rice comes back. And KC has a really tough round of actually matchups coming up soon too. So I don't think that this is like, obviously it's a little bit of a sell low in some ways too, because everyone knows some of these things, but I think that we're selling it before it kind of snaps completely back the other direction. You're banking on unsustainable touchdowns. And if you can find someone that's just box score watching and trying to find some of those bigger fantasy scores to trade for, or someone that values it higher than it should be, because you should be targeting guys based on role, on volume, not necessarily results, touchdowns, that sort of thing. He would be a guy that I'm absolutely trying to trade away. If you have more questions for me, you want to talk through some trade targets, you also have some questions about who you should start, who you should sit in week 5, come join us 10 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning. Hit subscribe. We'll see you then.